Welcome to Marlene's Atelier. In this lesson, we are going to start adding some shape to our beautiful pencil skirt by incorporating darts. I'm going to show you how to do it both by hand and on machine. So you're not going to want to miss this lesson. That's what's happening today in the Atelier. All right, so we're back and we're going to start working on our darts, okay? So you have an option if you want with this skirt. You can do all of your darts on the machine, okay? You don't have to pick stitch them if you don't want to, but if you'd like to get some practice pick stitching, I would absolutely positively encourage you to do that, okay? So what I want to show you first of all is we are going to machine the darts on our lining, okay? Now I'm not going to make you sit through all of these darts because you'll lose your mind, okay? So I'm just going to show you how to do one panel, okay, in terms of machining. Now you probably can't see this because it's very, 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 very light, okay? But here, and I'll just go over it again. Here are my darts on my cloth, or excuse me, on my lining. Now, I told you when we started that I wanted to use this side of my lining as the face, okay? So I'm just going to get these darts in here nicely. Here we go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer these darts to the other side, and I'm going to treat this side as the wrong side of my cloth, okay? So this is going to be the right side, and the other is going to be the wrong side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and transfer my horizontal line first, okay, to the other side. And then, just like I did before, I'm going to transfer all the other vertical lines here. Okay, so they're easy to see on the other side. Easy breezy. Okay, so there's that. So I've transferred those, and I'll of course do the other side. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get on the machine, and I'm going to show you how to just machine these on our machine. Okay, so that's easy. We'll go do that in a second. Now on the skirt, okay, on the actual skirt itself, if we're hand stitching, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We want to chalk in on the wrong side of our cloth, okay? We want to chalk in the actual dart itself, okay? Now, the thing that you have to also remember when you're sewing this, whether it be by hand or machine, the inlay that we have up top, okay, we don't want to keep going with the dart when we get to the actual waistline, okay? When we get to the waistline, what we want to do is we want to square up, right? Because our dart is meant to be, on my skirt, on the back, 2.5 centimeters. If I keep going, all right, it's going to make my waistline really small. So we have to square that dart up from the waistline, okay? It's important to understand that. If you haven't become a member of the Beginner's Atelier yet, I highly encourage you to do so. It's absolutely free, and it gives you access to online lessons, downloadable workbooks, and additional resources to supplement these videos. All you have to do is visit the Marlene Atelier website. That link is in the comments section below. So what I'm going to do here is, let me just put this out of the way here for a moment, is I'm going to actually chalk in my darts here and here, here and here, okay? And I want to give myself a nice guideline right? So if I take this lovely chalk and I give myself a beautiful guideline to follow, it makes both machining the dart easy, or if you're going to baste top stitch and pick stitch, okay? You can do both, all right? Now, what I'm gonna do, because we're just making a skirt for a skirt's sake, is I'm gonna show you how to machine it, okay? And then I'm also gonna show you how to pick stitch it, all right? When we, even if we're pick stitching the dart, all right, on the cloth, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up from the point of the dart, let's just say a couple centimeters, okay? And I'm gonna mark that. I'm actually gonna machine that couple of centimeters on the machine, because when you hand stitch, unfortunately, we can't get that really crisp, clean, sharp point in a dart that we want. It ends up looking nubby and really bad, okay? So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna machine this first couple of centimeters, and then I'll hand stitch the rest. And on this one, I'll show you how to machine the whole thing, all right? So let's go over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to knock both of these out. Okay, so here we are at my great little Juki sewing machine here. And I have my one side here. Let me see, I'm gonna try and work with my camera to show you, because I've got it sitting literally right in front of me, okay? So here you can see the dart that I've chalked in, okay? And what I wanna do, I'm gonna just position this here, is first let's get this mark stitch out, okay? See my mark stitch? I'm gonna just take that out. This is the mark stitch that's sitting at the very bottom, at the point of the dart, okay? We wanna take those out, because if we don't, what ends up happening is they get stuck in the machine thread and they're impossible to get out, okay? So here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna back this up a little bit. I'm gonna just fold my dart in half, okay? And I'm gonna position the point of the dart in my machine, okay? Now I gotta get in here to lift this up. Here we go. All right, so now what I wanna show you is this. What I've done is, let me get this really super close, okay? What I've done here, if you can see, is I've lined up the dart, the tip of the dart, okay? So that when my needle goes into it, okay, it's just going to hit the very, very edge of the cloth, right? So let me show you. The other thing too, I'm not gonna move this now because I'm in a great spot. Oh, I'm just missing it. Hold on. I'm gonna move it over just a smidgen more. There we go. All right. So you see, if I bring this in, can you see how that now is just touching the very, very edge of the cloth at the tip of the dart, okay? That's what we're looking to achieve there. And hopefully, if I lift the foot, you see that? That's it. Now you can see it. Just hitting the very, very edge, the very tip, okay? We don't want to get too much cloth in that, because if we do, we're going to have like a bubble at the end. And we want this dart to literally disappear into the cloth, okay? We want it to disappear into the cloth. So now what we're going to do, I've left as well, if you can see here, I don't know if you can, yes. I've left quite a bit of thread to start with, okay? Because I need to tie that into a knot, okay? I don't want to backstitch on this at all. And I'm just gonna move, pardon me, I'm just gonna move this camera a little bit so that I can actually get in here and sew on the machine. I know, it's a little crazy, and please forgive me, but I really wanted to make sure that you could see what I was doing, because this is really important. Okay, so let's see how I do here, working around this camera, okay? So now I'm just gonna sew on the machine, okay? And what's really nice when you start sewing on a machine is if you just take small bites, okay? Now see, isn't this great? We've got this beautiful chalk line, and I'm just taking very small bites. You don't have to go fast. In fact, if you're learning how to use a sewing machine for the first time, just take your time. You've got a nice guideline there. Just take a small little bite, one at a time. You see that? Perfect. Now, when I get up to this next mark stitch, I got to take that one out too. Let's get that out of there. Come on. There we go. When I get up to the waistline, okay, it's just going to be stubborn. What we have to do now is, I told you we want to square this off. Boy, is he a little pain. I'll leave him then. All right, we want to square him off, okay? So we're going to come up a few more stitches to the waistline, which is where that mark stitch refuses to come out of. Okay, and now instead of continuing to keep going at an angle, I'm going to straighten. You see my mark right here? That's my squared mark, okay? And now I'm just going to finish that off, square it up, back stitch the top, and we're done, okay? So that's that. And take that out. There. So that's what, and now here, let me just back this out a little bit more. There we go. Get a little room. There we go. Now what we can do is we can take this thread and tie it off, right? So we just want to tie it into a few knots here, right at the very end. Okay, just untwist it a little bit. There we go. So I'm just going to tie like 2 or 3 knots. And it's easier said than done, right? There we go. There we go. Perfect. There we go. All right, and so that's that. So that's what our dart is going to look like machined. And if you open it up, of course we need to press it, but look at how nice that looks. Doesn't that look beautiful? Yeah, that looks really good. And so you can see this dart, it just disappears right into the skirt. You don't even see it. You don't even see it. All right, so that's machining. Now this one, what we're going to do is we're just going to come up like, I would say like 8 stitches. My line faded, so I don't know where my line went. It just completely faded off of there. So we're going to start out the same way, okay, where we're going to put this into, start at the very tip, okay, once again, leaving some thread. And again, I'll get my big hand out of the way here, but I'll zoom in so you can see that again, I'm just going to bring the edge of the cloth, just have that sit on the very, very edge there, you see? So we can get a really, really good point. And now I'm just going to very slowly follow my line, but count 8 stitches. So, right? And I'll stop right there. I think we can zoom that out now. There we go. And bring that up. And then now that's all we're going to do. We're going to leave some thread here, okay, like so. And when I go back over to the table, I'll tie that off. We'll have thread at the bottom, and we'll have thread here. And what we'll do is we'll tie that off, and I'll show you how to baste and pick stitch the rest of that dart. So you have an option. You can do it one way or the other. Now we're going to jump over to the other machine, and I'm going to show you how to go ahead and sewing your darts on your lining. All right, so here we are. I've got my lining here, all right? And what I've done, it's really hard to see because of the lighting, okay? But where I've put my needle into the lining here is where the one leg is, okay? And of course I met it with the other leg on this side. So I'm sure that I've got the right width of dart, okay? And then here at the bottom, what I've done is I've just put a needle in the bottom to indicate where I'm going to start. Okay, so that's the bottom of the dart. Of course, I'm leaving some thread off to the side here, okay? And just like I did before, I'm going to get the needle out of the way now. I'm going to put my needle into the very, into the very, very edge, of my cloth. Can you see that if I bring this in a little closer? Okay, it's on the very, very edge. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to machine it very slowly. Just when you're doing this, it's often very helpful to just leave your hand, bring your finger here and hold and take a little chunk, especially with lining. Okay, again, don't backstitch here. We're just going to go real slow, okay? And if you don't put a line in, it's not a big deal. What you need to do is draw a line from the needle to here, okay? Just draw a line with your eye. And the needle will absolutely, positively go right there. See? Just draw a line with your eye. There it is. And when I get to that point now, I can pull this pin out. All right, and a couple more stitches till I get to the waist. And then I'm going to turn it, okay, and come right up to the top, just square it up to the top. And here I can backstitch. All right, that's all there is to it. That's not hard at all. Okay, now I should also mention when we're sewing our darts like this stitch here on the machine on mine is a 2. You want a medium stitch. You don't want anything that's super duper small or super duper big. So you want something that's kind of in between stitches. So if you make a mistake, not a big deal. You can take it out and do it again. You can do it as many times as you need to until you get it right. And so here now with the lining, I'm just tying this off a few times, okay? All right, and I'll cut that, get that thread out of the way. And then if we open it up and we take a look at our dart, it looks very beautiful. And what we'll do is I'll show you how to press all these darts when we're done with them, okay? So you have a nice pressed out dart. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go back over to the work table and I'm going to show you how to actually do your darts by hand. Here what I'm doing, what I did, just to recap, was I came in and I just sewed the first like 2 centimeters up from the point of the dart, okay? I tied off the bottom, and here, where we came up a little bit, we want to tie this off as well, but we don't want to tie it off really, really tight, right? Because we came up and it's probably a couple millimeters wide. So just tie it where the thread just lays on the top of the cloth, okay? That's all I'm doing here. Okay, just like that. All right, great. All right, now I've got my dart chalked in, but I'll put in the chalk a little bit darker so you can see it here. Okay, so here's my chalk. Here's the middle of my dart, more or less here. Okay, and of course we're going to square this up when we get to the waistline. So hopefully you can see that a little bit better. All right. I make it a rule, and I hope it goes without saying that when we're sewing, we're putting right side to right side, okay? just so you know. Hopefully I don't need to tell you that, but maybe I do. It's okay if I do. It's not a big deal. All right, so what I like to do when I'm sewing a dart is I like to start from the bottom, okay? From the point, I should say, and work my way up. So where I left off with my machine stitches is where I'm going to start basting, okay? And this basting stitch, so I'm going to tack it. I'm going to come in here and put a nice baste in here and tack it. Whoops, to hold it. Okay, I'm just going to bring my baby out here a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing. All right. I've got silt from that lining tickling my nose. I do. There it is. Okay. Damn lining. Okay. All right, so here we go. We're going to tack this. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to baste, and I want to keep my stitches pretty small. Okay, no more than a centimeter, all right, and pretty close together. And again, I'm just, I folded the dart in half, and I'm following my chalk line, okay? And I'm going to come all the way up to the top, obviously, right? So I'm just, you can see, I'll put here, see, that's how big my stitches are. They're pretty small. They're pretty small, okay? And I'll come up to the top, and when I get to the very top, I'll just bring this back over here. When I get to the very top, I'm just going to square this off and then tack it, okay? Square it off and tack it. So small stitches, keep them close, like a ½ centimeter in between, okay? And then just tack it at the top. Perfect. All right. Now, what's really interesting about this is how, like when we get into making waistcoats and jackets and things like that, this is how you're going to do all of your seams, okay? Is when I say baste and top stitch, this is how we would go about doing it. Now, the other thing, we haven't pressed our darts yet, but I have a rule when it comes to pressing darts. I press all of the seam allowance for my darts back this way towards the side seam for everything. If it's in the trousers, waistcoats, jackets, whatever it is, it gets pressed towards the side seam, okay? So what I'm saying is I'm going to be pushing my seam allowance here this way, okay, towards the side seam. And I'm going to do the same thing when I come in to top stitch this, okay? Let me lay this flat so it's easier for you to see. All right, is when I say top stitch now, I'm going to come back off the edge of my dart, okay? I have the dart folded away from me. This is really important. So the fold is going this way, and the seam allowance underneath is going towards me or towards the side seam, okay? And what I'm doing, just like I would anything else, is I'm opening up the seam just enough so I can see the first set of stitches that I put in, okay? And then I'm just going to baste this again using small stitches, 1 centimeter or less. You don't have to make them so tiny, but a centimeter with a ½ centimeter in between, okay? And all right, so they should look like that, if you can see that, all right? Now, normally what I would do is I wouldn't hold this on the flat, but I wanted you to see how, how to baste this. And the other thing too is you want to leave a little space. You want to come off the edge, maybe like 2, no more than 3 centimeters, because you have to leave enough room to pick stitch, okay? Because you're going to pick stitch right on that edge, okay? So normally what I would do is I would pick this up in my hand, okay? And I would hold this with pushing the seam allowance here, all right, if you can see, back, and then holding this open, forcing the seam allowance open, all right? And that way I have much more control over my stitches, okay? Much more control than if I have it what we would call on the board, if we were doing this on the board, okay? So see, I can do a nice baste, running baste, okay? And I'm just going to top stitch this down to where my machine stitches start. So wherever those machine stitches start, that's where I'm going to stop. I don't have to keep going beyond that. Okay, I'm just going to open this up a little bit more here. Finish this off. Really simple. Okay, so there I am, my last stitch right here. Okay? All right, and then I'll tack this. Now, what we want to do next, okay, is press this. So we want to make sure that we have a really nice line. The most important thing when you're pick stitching seams or darts is you want to make sure that they're straight or that they're taking the shape that they're meant to take, okay? You don't want to have a dart that all of a sudden comes down, it's like squiggly. That looks terrible. Unacceptable, actually, okay? So here, if I turn this over, you can see that the dart, the seam, is now facing the side seam. And by the way, I'm working on the back of the skirt right now, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually press both of these. I'm just going to put a little water. And because I'm working on the back of my skirt, I don't need to use a press cloth, okay? I will use a press cloth on the front because I don't want to burn the cloth, okay? And here, if you've sewn or machined your dart, what you'll do is just pull the cloth open a little, and actually it would help if I put a little water on that. Don't need to soak it, just put a tiny bit of water, open it up, and just press it back towards the side seam, okay? Just like that. That's all it takes. Really simple. And make sure when you're pressing, of course, that it's dry when you stop, all right? And now we can look at the other side. Okay, and I just need to open, that's fine. I just need to open this dart a little bit more, okay? So here, I'll take my press cloth and I'll just put a little bit of water on that, okay? And I'm just going to pull this open as I press, just to make sure I've opened that dart completely. Oh yeah, there we go. So now, if you look at the dart that's been machined, okay, it's kind of almost undetectable. You can barely even see it because it just fades into the cloth. And same here, we have to pick stitch this now, okay? But before we do, excuse me, we have to take out the first base that we put in, all right? And of course, I left my seam rippers someplace where I can't reach them, so I'll use my scissors. But I'm going to take that first baste out. Now, you're like, why, Mar? Well, the reason being is if you leave the baste in and you pick stitch, it's almost impossible to get that basting stitch out, okay? So just get it out of the way, all right? And now, and I can also, well, I guess I could take out a little bit of these marked stitches, not all of them, just the vertical ones. We don't need those anymore, okay? Yeah, just get that out of there. All right. Okay, now what I'm going to use to pick stitch this, all right, is some really beautiful hand silk. All right, so I've got some hand silk, and somewhere, oh, there it is. And I've got a needle here that is a little bit smaller. I think if you remember when we were sewing basting earlier, I told you that we should use a bigger basting needle. Well, this is, I don't even know if you can see the difference, but it is smaller. And you always want to use a smaller needle when you're doing handwork. It just helps you to be a little bit more agile, okay? And of course, if you're using hand silk, what they do, and this is why my baby looks like such a car wreck, is you want to just press off the wax, okay? So just take your iron and run the thread through the iron a couple of times. This has wax on it to protect it, and if you don't, the wax gets on your cloth and it can stain it and looks terrible, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do at the very, very top up here is I'm going to tack this off because no one's going to see this, okay? This is going to be in the waistband, all right? So I'm just going to put a couple of tacks in here. This is in the inlay. It's probably better to start, if you can't always, I guess, start from the top of the dart, but you can't always do that, especially if you're going to hold it properly. Okay, so what I'm doing now, okay, is I'm getting my pick stitch going. And when I'm pick stitching this dart now, okay, my pick stitches are very close together. They're only like maybe 2 or 3 millimeters apart. Okay, so it's a very close, small stitch. So I'm coming 2 or 3 millimeters forward, okay? But the idea of a pick stitch is to go right back in or close into the hole that your thread came out of, okay? And again, I'm doing this on the flat so you can kind of maybe get a little bit of an idea of what I'm doing. But normally when I pick stitch, I would hold this, once I got a little cloth behind me here, okay, I would hold this in my hand, and I know when I do this, you can't see what I'm doing, okay, but I just want you to see that this, if you're doing this at home, you should be holding this in your hand because you have much more control over your pick stitch when you have a working and a non-working hand together, okay? So the non-working hand right now is feeling the stitch underneath and helping the stitch to go through the cloth, right? My thumb and my forefinger's underneath, my thumb's on top. My thumb's kind of like a stopgap. It's saying, stop here, don't make the stitch any longer, okay? And my finger underneath is saying, yeah, I felt that, go back in. So this helps build a lot of, if you will, speed and agility when you're hand sewing, okay? So here I've got it scooped underneath here. And again, it's so impossible for you to see what I'm doing. I hope that you're just getting the technique. A couple of things just to keep in mind as you are pick stitching here. Don't pull the thread really tight, okay? Because you don't want to get down here and just be like wham and yank it, okay? Because if you do that, what's going to happen is you're basically you're gonna end up with a ripple. Your whole dart is just going to be all rippled up and look really gnarly, and you don't want that, okay? So that's number one. Number two, if you hold the dart in your hand as you pick stitch, the other benefit to doing that is you're making sure that your dart is super straight, because you can see my working hand is resting on the cloth, and I'm putting some tension on the cloth as I sew. I'm kind of pulling it a little bit. So that's ensuring that my dart stays really straight, okay? And so the other thing I can tell you as you learn to hand sew is there's a little trick we need to do with our thread too. If you see my thread, it's very staticky, by the way, it's not quite all the way down to the bottom, right? I have a lot of thread here, all right? It's not quite doubled up. And I have maybe 5 or 6 centimeters from the skirt up to where the end of this thread is. And I like to keep it like that because when you're hand sewing, you want to take the time to get the stitch right, but then when you pull, okay, that's where your speed comes in. When you follow through with your stitch, okay? So every time I pull out my thread, I'm just pulling the thread that's loose a little bit. So it stays that 5 or 6 centimeters off of the skirt and from doubling up. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we don't get a little knot now and then, so be careful of that. But we're almost done with our pick stitch here. And again, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I will do my best to take a picture. And I think you will be able to tell the difference between the dart that was pick stitched and the dart that was actually machined. The one that's pick stitched, you may be able to catch a little glimpse of the impressions that are made from the pick stitch. And that's really what makes it look so lovely, is you've got this beautiful little impression. And the dart, because we've top stitched it, actually has a little bit more depth to it, right? It has a little bit more depth to it. So there is a noticeable difference between a machined dart and a pick stitch dart, but I don't know if you'll catch it on film or not. That's the problem. So, all right, so I finished off here. Of course, I have a little knot here. There we go. Now what I want to do to finish this off is I can't tack it, and just let me reiterate that I finished the pick stitch where the machining starts, okay? So I'm not going into where it was machined at all, okay? And now what I'm going to do to finish this off is I'm just going to push my needle through the cloth and bring it over to the other side, and then I can just tack it here around my seam. That's all I'm doing. It's just tacking this around my seam like this a couple of times, and we're done. That's it, okay? Now, the last thing we need to do is we need to take the top stitch out, okay? So we can do that very carefully with our scissors here so we don't damage the cloth. All right, so there's that. And now I can come in and put a little bit more water on this and give it a final press, okay? So we have our little dipstick, a little water, we're on the back, and I'm just gonna press that off real nice. Got a couple of little threads here I'm going to get rid of so I don't have a big mess in the back of my waistcoat or the back of my skirt. Boy, got waistcoat on the brain, okay? And then here I can press the top again. Just give it another nice press. Okay, that's it. That's all there is to it. Thank you for joining me in the atelier today. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please do like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And in my next lesson, I'm going to be showing you how to make up the back of that beautiful pencil skirt. That's going to include inserting the zipper by hand and also tailoring the kick pleat. You're not going to want to miss that next lesson. That's what's going to be happening next time in the atelier.